I, 26 female, moved into a quiet suburban street with my golden retriever named Sunny. He is the softest, most chill dog on the planet, but a new neighbor decided he looked aggressive and started calling the police on us. What followed was a ridiculous parade of false reports, cameras, and fines that turned into the funniest kind of justice. I am a 26-year-old woman who moved into a quiet suburban street with my golden retriever named Sunny, and a very ambitious plan to live the kind of life where weekends smell like cut grass, and the loudest thing on any given afternoon is an ice cream truck playing an off-key melody somewhere around the corner. And for a short time, that is exactly what I got. Because Sunny is the kind of dog who thinks all creatures were invented to be his friends, from toddlers with sticky hands to elderly neighbors who walk like they are folded paper, and even the mail carrier who used to fear dogs now stops to scratch Sunny's ears, because Sunny's entire personality can be summarized as wagging tail, open heart, and unshakable belief that every day is the best day. And then 2 houses down, a new neighbor arrived with a stiff posture, a permanent frown, and a voice that sounds like a complaint even when she is just saying good morning. And while her legal name is Brenda, the way she wields her phone and talks to managers and rehearses outrage would make the entire internet agree that Karen is the more accurate title. So this Karen arrives and immediately decides our street has standards that we have all failed to meet, like how the trash bins should line up like soldiers and the porch lights should all be the same wattage, and the wreath should be seasonally correct on a calendar only she understands. And I learned to nod and smile and keep walking because peace is built on selective hearing until the day Karen discovered Sunny and decided that his resting happy face is in fact the face of danger, even if the only thing he has ever attacked is a roll of toilet paper once, which he immediately regretted and then tried to apologize to. So here is the moment everything tilted: a slow orange afternoon with a soft breeze and a sun that made the sidewalk look like a postcard. Sunny is dozing in our front yard with a tennis ball under his chin. He occasionally opens one eye to check whether I am still reading on the steps and whether the butterfly that keeps teasing him will land within friendly distance. And from the corner of my eye I see Karen on her driveway holding her filming or summoning spirits, and she says very loudly for the benefit of the recording that there is an aggressive dog threatening her life, which is interesting because the aggressive dog is currently snoring, and then she walks a dramatic 3 steps. I am so stunned that I actually laugh, which she does not appreciate, and 10 minutes later a patrol pulls up and 2 officers step out with that mixture of curiosity and mild dread that says they have done this kind of neighbor call 100 times, and half the time it is about bushes being over the line, and the other half it is about noise, and they ask where the aggressive animal is. I gesture toward a golden rug that is breathing, and one officer crouches, pats his knee, and Sunny's tail starts drumming. He rolls over to present his belly. The officer chuckles and scratches him. Sunny kicks his back leg in bliss. The other officer looks at Karen, who is narrating that this is an act and that the dog is faking. And I think about all the times Sunny has tried to be scary, which is never. And the officers tell her there is no aggression here and to please refrain from tying up emergency lines with unfounded fear. She leaves in a huff, because that is her favorite mode of transport, and I think this is the end. But I have underestimated a woman who collects grievances like seashells and displays them in the glass case of her personality. Over the next days, she escalates in the way only a person with too much time and not enough hobbies can, appearing at random moments with her camera app open and statements rehearsed, accusing my dog of baring teeth when he is literally yawning, accusing him of lunging when he is on a leash sniffing a dandelion, accusing him of stalking when he is simply existing inside my fence line while she power walks past with the determination of someone training for the world championship of being right, and I start to feel the familiar tightness that arrives when nonsense becomes ritual. So I decide that data will be my shield, and I mount 2 small cameras that cover my porch and the line of the yard, and I start a log because the officer suggested it, and because logs turn fog into fact. I walk Sunny with my phone on, and my voice calm, because calm is the only thing more disarming than proof, and yet she calls again, claiming growls and menace and an attack from 6 feet away through a fence that a circus acrobat could not have scaled, and the officers return. Different faces, but same patience, and I press play on the footage of Sunny lying like an ottoman for 3 hours while she narrates danger to a lens, and the officers sigh in the way people sigh when their time has been stolen, and they tell her that false reporting is a problem and that there are fines, and she says she is a taxpayer, and I think so am I, and also Sunny, in spirit, and she storms back into her kingdom. I think, again, that maybe she heard them, but a person who needs conflict the way a dehydrated plant needs water cannot go long without finding it, so here comes the incident that turns ridiculous into performance art. A morning where the sky is the color of a new notebook page. I am tossing a ball. With Sunny, he is doing his dolphin leaps and returning it with the proud stumble of a dog who believes he has invented physics. I see Karen appear at her curb holding a raw piece of meat, like a prop, which is foreshadowing I failed to read in time, and she throws it over my fence and then yelps and clutches her hand as if she has been bitten, bolting back to her porch while shouting that she has been attacked by a dangerous dog, and in the same breath she calls the police and announces that a dog has drawn blood, and my brain does the math that anyone who lives in the real world would do, which is that Sunny is inside my fence and her hand is not, and the porched camera has recorded her toss the meat, and we watch together as Karen stages her own tragedy and Sunny The officers go very quiet in the way that means a report is about to become paperwork with consequences, and I am asked to email the video to the case number, and the officer walks to Karen's porch and speaks in the tone of a high school vice principal who has had enough, and I stand with Sunny scratching his neck while he leans into me, heavier than he looks because love has weight, and for the first time since this nonsense began I feel the scales tilt. Update 1. The morning after the meat toss, I print still frames from the footage and add them to my log with times and short notes written like a scientist, because details are the difference between a story and a record. I text 3 nearby neighbors who already know Sunny as the Golden, who politely asks for belly rubs and then thanks you by presenting a sock, and they reply that they have also been filmed without consent by Karen while simply existing on the sidewalk, and one neighbor says she was accused of reckless stroller pushing for walking too fast, and another says Karen demanded he stop grilling because she has a smoke sensitivity, but also demanded he trim his rosemary because it offends her aesthetic, and it becomes clear I am not the only one starring in her home production, so we compare dates and we notice a pattern where her calls tend to spike around the time her online marketplace listings do not. While correlation does not equal causation, it does produce a chart that makes you snort, and I add it to the file because humor is fuel, and then I speak with the same officer from the first visit who tells me quietly that dispatch has flagged her address for chronic caller review, which is bureaucracy talk for do not cry wolf 5 times and expect applause, and he advises me to keep doing what I am doing, document calmly, avoid direct confrontation, and let the process work. In the background of all this, the Homeowners Association wakes up because Karen has also filed 3 complaints about my flower boxes being too cheerful, and the association president sends me a 1-line email that reads, "We do not regulate joy," which I print and frame in my mind, and the neighborhood begins to wave when I pass and ask how Sunny is holding up and hand him treats with permission and whisper that they are tired of the show and has never seen a dog so aggressively friendly, which is a combination of words that makes me laugh for the first time in days. And when I laugh, my shoulders come down and Sunny licks my hand once like a punctuation mark. And I realize the tide has turned, not because I shouted louder, but because I recorded more clearly. Update 2. The patrol car that pulls up 3 days later carries an officer, with the kind of patient eyes you only get from years of breaking up arguments over hedges and noise at 2 in the morning. And he greets Sunny by name, because word travels, and asks me to play any new footage before he even goes to Karen. I show him a time-stamped clip from that morning where Sunny is asleep by the window while Karen narrates through her phone that the beast is pacing and snarling, and he watches in silence and then nods once. Then he walks to her porch, and I keep my distance because boundaries are good for mental health, and I see him hold his notebook and gesture and then point at my camera, and she does the gesture that means I am a taxpayer and a woman, and therefore right. He points at the body camera on his chest, and I watch her face do the math of a new kind of audience, and he returns to tell me they are issuing a formal citation for misuse of emergency services if she calls again without cause. He hands me a card with the incident number and a polite note that says please keep everything, which I was going to do anyway because I have now become the curator of this tiny museum of local nonsense, and that night 2 parents from down the street stop by with their small daughter in a princess costume who asks if she may pet the Golden, and she does, and Sunny melts like butter in July, and the parents laugh and shake their heads and say that some people cannot tell the difference between a wag and a growl because they do not want to learn. And we stand in our small circle of normal kindness while the sky turns the color of a ripe peach, and for the first time I feel like this story will end the way it should, with a lesson that looks like a ticket. Update 3. The neighborhood has started treating Sunny like a minor celebrity, which means every walk includes at least one child announcing, "There goes the fluff hero," and at least one adult offering him a biscuit that he politely takes and then carries home like a trophy he will never eat, because some objects are sacred. Karen is not enjoying this because attention is her currency and she is not making deposits, so she pivots to a new tactic that involves narrating threats into her phone at strategic moments when she thinks I am not recording, But I am always recording now, not because I am afraid, but because evidence is the gentle cousin of a shield, and on a bright morning she attempts the audacity of standing at the corner and describing in detail to a dispatcher that a large golden is chasing her, and the porch camera catches Sunny in the background snoring on the cool tile while a blue jay bullies a squirrel. When the officers arrive, they do not even step out fully before I wave them over with the clip already cued, and they watch, exhale, and one of them thanks me for saving their time, because false calls take them away from real emergencies, and I say I know you are busy and I am sorry this keeps happening, and he says do not apologize for someone else's hobby, and I think about that sentence for the rest of the day because some hobbies are kindness and some are chaos, and both are choices. In the afternoon, the Homeowners Association sends a flyer reminding residents that harassing neighbors is against bylaws and that animals who are licensed and calm are welcome. And I pin it to my fridge with a magnet shaped like a bone, and consider that sometimes the slow wheels do roll in the right direction. And then comes the afternoon that tilts the whole board toward resolution, the air heavy and a storm threatening the way summer storms do. Karen decides to practice melodrama again, stepping into my open gate like a person entering a stage, pointing her camera at Sunny and narrating that he has leaped, which is interesting because he is in a sit-stay waiting for me to throw a piece of carrot, yes carrot, because Sunny is odd and loves vegetables and that detail somehow makes this all more delightful, so I toss the carrot and he catches it and she screams that he snapped at her, and my neighbor across the street who has been watching this farce decides that community means participation, and calls out in a voice like a gavel that he has the whole thing on his. Karen freezes mid-performance with a face that says the audience has turned, and I call non-emergency and explain that I have footage of a neighbor staging an event to create a false report, and within minutes the familiar patrol car arrives, and the officer with patient eyes steps out with a tablet, and we airdrop 2 angles of vegetable catching to a case file, and in under 15 minutes the citation becomes a fine, because the record is not a story anymore, it is a stack of timestamps. Update 4. When the envelope appears in her mailbox the next week, delivered by a city employee who moves quickly like a man who has delivered many envelopes of this type, the rumor of its contents travels faster than trash day gossip, and later we learn through the polite grapevine of neighbors who lean on rakes that the fine is not symbolic, it is a number that will sting. The officer stops by to let me know the citation has been processed, the pattern has been logged, and any additional false reports will be treated as harassment with a potential misdemeanor, and he thanks me again for keeping the tone calm, because the tone matters when a case becomes a file that strangers have to read, and I tell him that I learned early that shouting burns fuel and proof generates power, and he smiles and scratches Sunny under the chin and calls him a good citizen, which I immediately add to my mental. That afternoon, 3 kids come by with a handmade card that reads, "Thank you for being a nice dog and for not eating me," which I frame in my kitchen because art is subjective. And at dusk, our street looks like a postcard again, and I can finally sit with my book while Sunny watches the light turn gold. And I think about how peace returns the way a tide does, quietly, and then suddenly the shore is dry. Update 5. The day I expected another call does not bring one, because at this point, even Karen can read the room, so instead of dialing, she limits herself to glaring from behind sunglasses that are too large for the winter sun. The neighborhood moves on like water around a stone, and the funniest thing about justice is that it is often dull in the best way. It looks like normal afternoons, where children draw suns with too many rays in chalk, and adults wave at each other with the quiet relief of not being filmed while taking out the trash. Sunny becomes the official morale officer at small gatherings because someone always asks if he can attend, and he always sits politely for cake even though he cannot have any. And sometimes I catch Karen watching us from her window, and I hope in some small corner of her mind she realizes that manufacturing fear is exhausting and unsustainable, and that she could have simply joined us and petted the golden like everyone else, but if that realization never arrives, it is not my burden. My job was to protect my dog and my peace, and I did that with cameras, notes, and patience. The last loose thread to tie up is the small envelope I decide to drop at the police station with a thank you note and a box of pastries because public service deserves sugar, and I include a photo of Sunny wearing a little bandana that says "Very good boy" and a printout of the card the kids made, and I write on the note, "Thank you for helping our street be quiet again," and on our next walk the officer with patient eyes passes in his cruiser, slows, and gives a small salute which Sunny interprets as an invitation to wag with his whole body. I realize that is the perfect final image for this story, not a dramatic courtroom or a triumphant monologue, but a dog wagging on a calm street while the grown-ups do their jobs, and the sun sets on a block that has learned the difference between bark and bite, between fear and fact, between the performance of danger and the practice of being a neighbor. The week after the fine, everyone on the street quietly waited for the next siren, the next patrol car pulling up with that weary look, the next unnecessary report. But nothing came, and for once the silence felt like justice. Because even though Karen still strutted down her driveway with the energy of someone auditioning for a reality show, she did not pick up her phone, she did not invent another accusation, and she did not toss any props over my fence, which was a relief not just for me but for the entire block, because there is a unique exhaustion that comes from being a background character in someone else's drama, and the moment the curtain falls you feel the entire street exhale, and I realized something small but powerful. Sometimes the best form of revenge is not revenge at all, it is boredom, it is making sure the person who tried to stir chaos is left with silence, routine, and neighbors who refuse to clap for their Sonny, of course, did not understand the politics. He just noticed that his walks no longer ended with a patrol car visit, that children still shouted his name like he was a superhero, and that people smiled when he padded past with his ridiculous grin, and I think that is what mattered more than anything, that the neighborhood reclaimed its rhythm, and that the only sound to interrupt the peace was the jingle of Sonny's collar tags when he shook himself dry after rolling in the grass. Karen, meanwhile, tried to keep her sense of control by glaring at me from behind sunglasses so oversized they looked like disguises. But even her glares lost their sting once I realized they were all she had left, and on some level one pitied her, because while she had wasted months building a story where she was the victim of an imaginary beast, the rest of us had built bonds, shared laughs, and reminded each other what a real community looks like, and she had shut herself out of it by choice. In the weeks that followed the fine, life slid back into the kind of ordinary calm that feels extraordinary when you have been without it for too long, and on a Saturday afternoon the kids from across the street invited Sonny to their chalk art festival, which was really just them drawing suns with too many rays and crooked rainbows that stretched into the driveway, and the parents laughed and said we should put him on the HOA board because clearly he knows how to keep the peace, and in that moment I felt something simple but real, that this was how the story was always supposed to end, not in screaming or accusations or even in fines, but in a golden retriever lying in a pile of chalk. A few days later I dropped off a thank you note and a box of pastries at the police station, with a photo of Sonny wearing a bandana that said, "Very good boy," because officers who spend their days sorting out noise complaints and petty feuds also deserve to see the outcome when the nonsense ends right, and one of them emailed me back to say Sonny had officially been nicknamed the Golden Citizen in their squad room, which made me laugh harder than anything Karen ever said, and I framed that email because proof of joy deserves archiving too. So that is how it ended. No dramatic courtroom, no tearful apology, no grand showdown. Just a calm street, a quiet dog, and a lesson that stuck with me every time I walked past Karen's house and saw her curtains twitch. You cannot manufacture fear forever, because truth has longer legs than lies, and love, especially the kind that comes with wagging tails, travels further than outrage. Sonny still naps in the yard like a golden rug, the kids still run to hug him on their way to school, and when I sit on the porch with a book, I sometimes catch myself smiling at nothing in particular, just grateful that justice came in the shape of fines, silence, and the simple sound of a dog snoring in the sun.